Great. We're here with Richard Stanley. It's October 6, 2018. We're in Portland, Oregon. And we just got done hearing a great reading of Clark Ashton Smith. I had some witty pop culture questions for you. But, honestly, hearing that reading, it's analogous to what I've kind of learned about you over the last few years. And you chose something very difficult to read. You chose something that was, kind of transcendental, and that transcendental experience that we all just went through, reading the Hashish Eater with you. I think it, for me, encapsulates a lot of what I've seen in your work and the things that you've done.
Oh, thank you. It's very, very kind of you.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting to me that you chose that. Why did you choose to read the Hashish Eater?
I think it's one of Smith's favourite examples of his own work.
Yeah.
I was trying to think what would make Smith happy.
Yeah.
And what would he want to be remembered for?
Yeah. And your other short film? From
the Mother of Toads,
yes.
I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea when I made Mother of Toads that that almost no one had made any adaptations of Smith. And I'm quite shocked that that's the case, and it encourages me to try and make more.
Yeah, it turned out nicely. So weird fiction then holds a special place for you, obviously.
Yeah, always has.
Yeah.
I think I was brought up in that. I was fortunate to have a mother who was who thought HP Lovecraft was her favourite author, and who introduced me to Lovecraft, Smith, and Bradbury and people while I was still at a very impressionable age, 6, 7, 8. I think I was reading most of Lovecraft by the time I was 10. And that means it still feels like home to me.
Yeah. Yeah, interestingly, listening to that story, and thinking about the reading we just went through, I feel as if, that transcendental experience that the Hashish Eater goes through, that hero's journey, is so bizarre and kind of parallels some of the stuff that you've done as well. Making hardware, which obviously was, a genre film, but very well done for very little money and very powerful and did so well. And then falling into the spider web of Miramax and Weinstein's and all this stuff, and then on into the stuff with Island of Dr. Moreau, after Dust Devil. And it's really interesting now, like you go to France and then you come back, and now you're sort of making that transcendental round yourself.
Yeah, I seem to be returning to the world again, which is
beautiful,
strange, and it's odd seeing how things have turned around in the last few years.
Yeah, so...
And Harvey's now in deep trouble. And
I have to say that one of my favorite showbiz stories that I've heard in the last few years, I heard an interview you gave in which you described Harvey Weinstein at Cannes after you ingested LSD.
Yeah, it was a bad experience.
I'd imagine so, to say the least. Could you share a bit of that with us?
Well, it's a ridiculous story, but because in point of fact, throughout the whole hardware experience, and the hardware came right after I'd been in Afghanistan in 1989, which was a very intense time, and I got pulled out of the war straight onto hardware. So there was a long period of time when I was heavily engaged with very insanely vital and complicated things on a day-to-day basis, and I literally didn't have the chance to get drunk or get stoned or mess around with any drugs for a very long period of time, because there was always some responsibility or something that needed to be done, or the situation was just too dicey and dangerous for one to want to relax. And I got through the whole of the making of hardware and the post-production period and all the dealings with Miramax, and then we finally got through the world premiere and the first screening at the Cannes Film Festival. And then after all that was done, I thought, okay, right, finally it's over, and it's okay, I can relax now. And somebody gave me a tab of acid. It was the second screening of the movie at Cannes. And I finally took the liberty of tripping in the movie, and which gave me the opportunity to see it with fresh eyes for the first time, to disengage from the experience and to see the film, I guess, from a different perspective. It was a midnight screening. It was there were a lot of kids there, and I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, the movie is only about 75 minutes long. Your average LSD hit lasts about 12 hours. So
you had some time to kill.
I was still completely off my face by the end of the screening. But thought I'd be able to get away with it. And what I didn't realize was that the first screening had done so well that it had attracted all the heavy hitters. So all the folk who didn't show up for the first screening were like waiting for me outside outside the theater on the second screening. And as I came out of the cinema, the very first thing I saw was like Harvey Weinstein coming at me, reaching his hand out, presumably to try and shake my hand or something. But as I was tripping as I came out, I just saw him as this strange, terrifying, grey kind of ogre. And I remember seeing the sweat clinging like beads to his greying flesh on his forehead and his hand coming towards me, and I completely freaked out and ran.
Which is my favorite part of the story. It seems like a completely appropriate response.
I was terrified. He looked exactly like a troll, which he kind of is. But I guess the whatever I'd taken gave me the clarity to notice that. I recall I ran in terror through the Cannes Film Festival.
That's amazing.
I eventually saw a swimming pool through a line of trees. I cut through some hotel garden and ran through the trees and dove straight into the swimming pool and went to the bottom of the pool and tried to hide at the bottom of the deep end. In fact, it was the tour manager for a band called Einstürzende Neubauten, who had been sitting smoking a joint with some friends next to the pool in the middle of the night when this mad fucker comes running out of the trees and flings himself into the pool, and the tour manager dove into the pool and rescued me.
There's deep irony in that story.
It was 1989.
Wow. To me that's fascinating. And I guess the more I have looked at what you've been doing, prior to, going and just kind of, hanging in France and doing what you're doing there, while you were here, it just, it didn't click, for you, because it's almost like a Hunter S. Thompson thing, like you're too weird to die, really, but too weird to live too, that whole concept, within the Hollywood system. And I feel that when I watch your movies, and they're great, and I love them. I'm very excited to see what you bring to this Lovecraft adaptation. I think The Color Out of Space is a film that you would do great with, and I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on how you're going to develop that narrative. Like it seems like such a a running narrative that I'm curious how it would translate to film in your eyes.
It's been a very curious thing because it wasn't my idea. I mean, apart from the fact it's originally an HP Lovecraft story, but Color Out of Space was pretty much brought to me and dropped at my feet by circumstance. It might not have been the first Lovecraft story I would have picked to adapt because it's been adapted several times before.
Have you enjoyed any of the other adaptations?
I quite enjoyed Die Farbe a couple of years ago. I quite enjoyed Annihilation, which out of the last year, which is probably one of the closest sort of, one of the stronger adaptations. Yeah, I mean, we've all seen Die Monster Die. I enjoy the lonesome death of Geordie Verrill from Creepshow. Mm-hmm. So, Colours have been visited by a number of different talents over the years.
Yes, yeah, and I think that it would be. I think it's going to be great. I have every confidence that you'll do very well with it because I think you'll bring something technologically different to it, and I think you've got hopefully more budget and more tools. What you did with hardware was pretty spectacular when you consider the amount of money you have. Had it for that film, and so now that everything is digital and you're going to be able to shoot and do so much stuff in post.
I'm trying to do a lot of stuff live though. I'm still a big fan of the creature effects, and I'm going to try and keep as much of it on camera as I can. But there's also it's going to be psychedelic, which is means we've got an opportunity to try to deploy some of the technology we now have to psychedelic effect. Because certainly there's stuff we can do now which we couldn't have done a bunch of years ago. I mean, hardware, for instance, fakes up heat vision, like that Technicolor heat droid vision stuff that's going on in hardware. Obviously, it didn't exist at that point in time. But now we have a new generation of FLIR cameras that actually do see in color. whereas before infrared was always black and white. Now the technology exists so we can actually film energy and use heat as a light source, and there's all kinds of weird stuff that I'm hoping to redeploy to psychedelic effect. I mean, the one thing that I'm going to keep from hardware is I'm going to try and retain the basic structure of it being a trip. I mean, hardware basically works like a trip. It's about the first 40 minutes, so you're kind of waiting to come up, and you're not really sure whether it's going to work or not. that it starts to come up in a very kind of jagged way and amps up to the Moe's death scene in hardware, which feels like the apex, the trip sequence, and color in a similar way. I'm hoping to structure so that it takes the audience on that journey, and I'd like to take them to a genuinely Lovecraftian place. I'd like to take us into something resembling a Virgil Finlay painting by the latter part of it. And the weird part about color is I'm not really in control of it. But I guess one never really is. It's more like directing energy or directing traffic or something. It's the project that's been wanting to happen. And there's all kinds of different folk who are involved in it, not all of whom I can name right now.
I heard a casting announcement.
Yeah, but I can't really say that officially because it's not inked yet.
Understood.
But the more people who get involved with it, the more I see that the thing actually wants to happen. Beyond that, there's an interest now in the world in Lovecraft's work, which I think has been getting stronger every single year. Every time I hear that, say now this guy who's made Get Out last year wants to make a Lovecraft movie next. And
Lovecraft Country.
Yeah, and Brian Eno's come out now as a Lovecraft fan, and there's more and more A-listers who are suddenly getting involved, and I think that it's just going to take one movie to recoup or do well at the box office, and we'll suddenly see 4 or 5 of them.
And how would that make you feel to see Lovecraft actually, not as, black comedy or something like that, but as a serious mainstream horror adaptation?
Yeah, I'd really love to see that. I mean, I'm fond of Stuart Gordon's work. I actually play one of the fish people in Dagon. At the same time, I think it's time for the material to be seriously reconsidered. I've always wanted to see what would have happened if, say, Andrei Tarkovsky or Ingmar Bergman or Stanley Kubrick had picked up the material rather than Stuart or Roger Corman. So
I want to go another direction. You said color wouldn't have been your first choice. I want to know what your first adaptation of a Lovecraft story would, if you could choose.
I've always thought that there's life in the Dunwich horror. I've always felt that the Whately family needed more attention.
Old Wizard Whately.
Wizard Whately. I mean, even if one didn't do Dunwich horror, I'd love to do the Whately family. Mm-hmm. In fact, the Whateleys could practically be a TV series.
NBC.
Because there's something about the idea of this backwards family who are not cannibals like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but who have crossbred with ultra-dimensional entities or demons and have kind of weird ultra-dimensional powers and properties. I think it's just so much fun. There's so much you could do with that.
Oh, that's a lovely idea.
I'm surprised that the Whateleys haven't been reinvented for the present day, and I don't think Wilbur's really been given his due yet.
Yeah, I have one question that's a little off of the path. In the other world, you mentioned before you went into the landing there where this ghost had come out 4 years ago, and you kept going back and searching for the ghost, and you were trying to rationalize it. And in that sequence, you said that ghosts weren't something that you normally would prescribe to, or that those entities weren't something you would normally prescribe to, but you had to keep going back. I wonder, with magic, with this type of spiritual practice or things like that, it finds its way into your work and into your ethos, and so. Are you a practicing, magician? Are you what? How do those things inform your work?
I guess it's becoming more of a part of my work because really the incident in the other world was the point when I realized that the supernatural did exist. There was a long time in my life when I was on the fence before that, wondering whether it did or not, and that was really the first time that it sort of dropped the other shoe and did something that I had absolutely no explanation for. And there was also the problem of there being another witness. that I wasn't alone at the time. Had I been alone at the time, I would have rationalized it away as a hallucination or an acid flashback. But the fact that there was one other witness present meant that I was unable to ever fully get back into my real life. It's been complicated because that episode has continued to screw up my life for the next few years. Essentially, I promised the thing in the castle that I'd protect it and guard the castle, which has put me through a lot of trouble the last few years, because I think, in hindsight, whatever force was at work in the castle knew what was coming, and possibly reached out to me because it needed help, because it knew that we've had first an initiative to try and seal off the mountain and turn it into a theme park. Then an international mining consortium have discovered vast deposits of a hitherto unidentified mineral element beneath the mountain, and want to pulverize the place in order to extract this thing called IMRIS, HARG talc. And they're a bunch called the IMRIS group, who are IMERYS, who are very much like the Harkonnens from Dune. And I had no idea any of that was coming at the point when I saw the apparition in the castle, and then foolishly said that I would defend the place with my life, my sword, and my soul. So since then, there's been a progression of multinationals and different things threatening the mountain that I've been forced to stand up to. The latest battle with the IMRIS group cost me my house, so I lost the place that I was staying in now in Montsegur.
Are you still living?
I'm living in a Smith-type cabin now under the east face of the mountain, which is pretty rough. There's no refrigeration, not much electricity, and tricky actually operating out of it.
And you're a mountain guide as well.
Yeah, I'm the only English-speaking mountain guide in that region, and I tried to relate the story of the place, and also in the course of the 28 years that I've been involved in Montsegur, I've got to find out a lot of things about the area. Just in terms of where the ancient remains are, where there's old standing stones, where there's caves, where there's rock art, etc. And a lot of the people who've shown me those things are dead, or are no longer there to explain it to anyone. I don't think anyone else knows that stuff in English. I'd like to try and make an app before they get rid of me, or before something happens to me. I think if I take the GPS coordinates of all the main spots and program them into, like, Google Earth, one could possibly get an app to work on a cell phone that would at least be able to still tell where the various things are. But sorry that so few people are around to actually carry that information.
Yeah, kind of tribal knowledge gets lost these days unless you archive it somehow.
Yeah, it's very much, at the moment, my job out there is very much like being a stalker in, like, that Roadside Picnic book or in the Tarkovsky movie, because you have to show people physically how to get to those spots. You can't direct them. You can't say, well, you go up halfway up the mountain, you go left to the big tree, and then there's a funny rock, and you go right there. People have no chance. So somebody has to physically show you the first time where the entrance to the cave is, or where the path is, in order to remember it.
I think that's all very fascinating, and it to me, the statement that you made, the question that I asked about the paranormal and the rationalization prior to, you would have rationalized it away. It draws parallels to Lovecraft and how, he was dyed-in-the-wool atheist, and he, wrote these fantastic stories that had these metaphysical elements and cultists and all of these things that, we now bundle into this paranormal existence. And I guess I wanted to know, I also see parallels between Lovecraft and you with the art for art's sake, and he was writing without, concern for remuneration. And I think that what I learned from the Island of Dr. Moreau documentary was that you were there to create a universe. You were there it wasn't about the money, it wasn't about the names, it was about creating a universe. And I think that because of that similarity that you share, it's going to be really great to see what you do with the Lovecraft film. And do you intend to, as you keep making films, do you intend to push, into a more commercial, stream of ideas, or do you intend to, follow this kind of path that you've carved out that's uniquely yours, like what direction do you see the future going for yourself?
In the way, if everything goes according to plan, The Color Out of Space will probably be the most commercial thing I've ever done in a funny way, because I will be taking cognizance of the Lovecraft community and what and Lovecraft's intentions rather than entirely my own feelings. And I also feel it's super important that the film connect with a present-day audience, and also a present-day audience outside of the Lovecraft community. I really want Lovecraft to be relevant to and to be terrifying to 13 and 14-year-olds who have never read any of the material before. I don't want it to be something quaint or something nostalgic that we look back to from the 1920s and 30s. I would like it to represent still a mind-wrenching, clear and present threat to modern audiences.
So you will become the Sutter Kane from John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, the harbinger to bring Lovecraft into the mainstream in this case.
Yeah, it needs not be funny. There can be a certain sense of humor in there between the characters, but the threat itself needs to be the thing itself needs to be utterly implacable and utterly alien and impossible to fucking deal with. I guess. In some respects, it's also the first time I'm making a horror movie. I don't really see the previous movies as horror movies. Quite Hardware is kind of a sci-fi action horror hybrid, and Dust Devil's this weird horror western road movie romance police procedural kind of generic meltdown of a movie, sort of African drive-in movie, whereas Color is much more squarely intended to terrify the audience.
Did you have a hand in writing the screenplay for Color Out of Space?
Yeah, no, it's my screenplay.
Very good.
And it's been floating around a few years. It's been transplanted from one country to another because the location keeps getting moved. Now it'll probably end up in Atlanta, Georgia, in January, February. So far, I've written versions of it set in, obviously, initially backwoods New England, Arkham. Then we tried writing a version set in Canada. There was a version for France. There was a version for Ireland. And now it seems to be settling down in Atlanta, Georgia. And I resisted attempts by people to say we should maybe move it to South Africa or Australia. But I think it's going to end up in the South.
Well, I think we speak for everybody when saying that we're hopeful to see you succeed with it and get it made and do very well with it. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very much. Thank you.